Anything?
So,
Transcript.
I will turn off the transcript because we don't want to watch that. Thank you, Tim. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. If you can't hear us, I'm hoping someone will wave or put a comment in the chat if you can't hear us. But if not, we're going to make a start. So a very good afternoon and welcome to our Faith Fiesta. This is our interfaith panel as part of Interfaith Week. My name's Dom, I'm the fourth chaplain, and it's my pleasure to attempt to chair today's proceedings. We are gathered in a rather warm classroom in sunny Netley, so we're hoping that we're coming to you live and clear, and we are also recording today's seminar and panel so that we can pop this on YouTube later and be available for anyone else to listen afterwards. So in a moment, we are going to meet our panelists and begin our session. If you're online, there will be a time for questions later, so please do have a think of those, and we will either pop them in the chat or you can come off mute afterwards to ask those questions. So let's start off and we will meet our panel. So if we begin on my right and work our way round.
Good afternoon. So my name is Saliha and I am Muslim. An interesting fact about me is so my surname translated from Portuguese or Spanish means paradise in English.
Thanks, Saliha.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ritesh. I'm Hindu priest. I work in Hindu temple in Southampton. And just, I believe there's only one God with many ways to the God, and just help me to be happy wherever I am.
Thanks, Ritesh. And the interesting fact you didn't say was, of course, you met the Prime Minister over the weekend.
Right. I'm lucky. I just met him when he was Chancellor. And when he met me, next week has resigned. Yesterday he came again, and then we have found something new. Cameron's back in the cabinet. So whenever I meet him after the blessing, he does do something new. That's nice.
Thanks, Ritesh.
Hi everyone, my name is Gerdit. I'm a police officer based in Fairham Gosport. I'm a Sikh. One interesting fact about myself is that I play Indian drums in my spare time.
Fantastic.
Real
We're all learning something new as well. And Tim.
So I'm Tim, I'm chair of the Christian Police Association, which gives a clue as to the faith that I have. And interesting fact, I'm going to regret saying this because my wife says that it makes me look like Harold Bishop from Neighbours, if anyone's old enough to remember that. But I play in a brass band in my spare time and play the ukulele.
Thanks, Tim. I loved Neighbours and Harold Bishop as well. So we're gonna launch straight in now with a question, and this question's for absolutely everybody on our panel today. So everyone, what ties all faiths together is a belief in something without seeing, be it God, a deity, a consciousness, or some other kind of spirituality. But why do we believe without proof? And I'm going to come first to Gerdit because he's made a mistake of looking at me.
For me personally, obviously, religion and faith is quite a personal thing. In terms of believing without seeing, obviously I was brought up as a Sikh, but in terms of my personal experiences, I think in times of need, and then within our field and within our role, we do see people in their times of need. I think it's just having a faith and believing in something really did help me personally get through that time. So that would be my answer. It's quite a short answer, but yeah, sums it up.
Thanks, Gerdit. And Tim, of course, different faith, but what do you think?
So when you think about what we believe, you've got a whole range of things, haven't you? From the tangible that's in front of you, that you can kind of see, feel, touch, smell. And then there's stuff that we kind of get told about, kind of history, characters, and those sorts of things. And then there's stuff that kind of steps into belief of things that are kind of, I guess, more spiritual. And I guess in terms of Christian faith, the middle one, there's a lot of historical evidence that Jesus existed as a person on earth. And so the step of faith is, well, who was he? Kind of what does his existence mean, and what does that kind of mean to us as faith? And my analogy for that is like what did Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? At the end of that, he's trying to look for the Holy Grail, and he gets to this kind of, well, it's Petra in Jordan. He gets to this kind of place there, and there's a big gulf that he's got to go across. And he gets told that there's a bridge there, but it's invisible and he can't see it. And he kind of throws a bit of dust out over the bridge, and he sees the first bit, but then he's got to step across this bridge and kind of step essentially out into nothing and kind of does it. And so those kind of, that bit of sand is the stuff that we kind of see around us, we can look and feel and touch. And then at some point, you've got to take that step of into the unknown. And for me, I believe that Jesus wasn't just a person that was around a historical figure, but also was the Son of God. He died, came back to life again. And for me, I experience that on a kind of daily basis. I can pray to him, speak to him, listen to him. And so it's that kind of sense of that is the, I guess, the sand that I throw over that invisible bridge that then lets me take those steps and kind of at some point you've got to step out in faith and believe what's then coming next.
Thanks, Tim. And are all of your answers going to contain either a movie or TV program with your neighbours and now India? looking forward to what may come next. So sticking with that same question, we'll go to Ritesh, please.
Right. So without seeing God, without believing anything, or all the faith have different beliefs. But actually, at the end of the day, actually, we are just looking at the real society. And the real society is different. Every destination is different, and everyone looking for something different. And when they need, they don't look at this who is faith or who's believing it. So I need something. So at the time, humanity comes first. What is the requirement for us? And at the time, we believe in God or not, we have any faith or not, but we just believe in that thing, okay, it's helping me. And that thing actually just helps each other, carrying each other, it just ties us together. And that makes peace and harmony everywhere. And that's why you can see that lots of people, they don't believe in the religion, they don't have any kind of faith. We can see nowadays in the latest world, people just say, oh, I don't have any religion, but still they come together for any kind of work. It means to run this world, there's humanity and care. It's so important for everyone. And that's thing like people comes together. Yeah.
Thanks, Ritesh. It's often in tragedy, isn't it, that we turn to faith and people come together as well.
Yeah.
And last but by no means least, Zaliha.
Yeah, so Islam is based on the unseen, and that's actually the base of our faith. So, and God does not want us to believe, of course, without seeing, but how do we see this? So imagine, for example, you're traveling on the motorway, then you hear over the radio that there is an accident, I don't know, 2 miles ahead. Then the reporter, on the radio says, turn immediately left or the next exit. So when you take that exit, what does it mean? Have you seen the accident ahead? Have you? Would you have seen the accident ahead? No, because it's 2 miles away. So God gives us that reasoning to have an understanding of who He is. And as part of our faith, I think that's what makes Islam unique. We believe in the unseen, so the angels, life after death, God Himself. And for us to understand who God is, I think if we look actually outside, there is a sky and it never falls down. There is the earth, it never goes up. And from our body, we see that somewhere, there is a creator somewhere. We've got the rain, we've got the trees, we've got the leaves. So how come that, they are made without us understanding that there is a being above us? And He just wants us to have that faith in Him, believing that, yes, He's there and He's responding to our specific or basic needs. So that's how, in Islam, you view it. So believing on the unseen is very fundamental to the Islamic faith.
Thanks, Zaliha. I'm absolutely terrible at turning off the motor radio when the radio tells me or the sat nav says, I'm like, no, it'll be okay. It can't be that bad. But there are many a time when I really should have listened. Perhaps a metaphor there for my life of faith as well. Really interesting to hear everyone's answers there, and a lot of common themes coming through. And I think, Zaliha, I love your bit about talking about creation, because for me, when I look at the world outside, there's a massive argument for me for a creator God. I think our world is just so beautiful and intricate that on a day like today, it's no longer raining here in Netley. It was this morning, but the sun has come out and it's looking pretty beautiful out there. I look at that and think, yeah, something created that. Someone created that, and for us all here, that's God. So I'm now going to direct my question to both Tim and Ritesh. So I want to talk about sex. What else is there to do? I want to talk about sex on a Tuesday afternoon here at Netley. So we'll start off with Tim. Why do religions get so caught up in it?
Well, thanks, Matt. I think we've got about 4 minutes, haven't we, to solve a big issue. But I'm going to move away from TV to the Spice Girls for a second, just to kind of keep things topical, or at least 90s topical. But I think most people would agree that there is something about sex which is deep, and the Spice Girls obviously in their song talk about when two become one. But there is something that is kind of creates a bond between people. And the Bible, we'll come on to talking about kind of is Christianity all about rules, but the Bible is really set up to help people to get the most out of life and to avoid falling into traps that end up hurting us. And so where there's talk about sex in the Bible, it's about trying to avoid people ending up in situations which will hurt them. And I think we see relationships which are deeply damaging. And in our world, we see the kind of the policing world, we see the impact of sexual offences and the deep impact that has on victims. And likewise, in terms of relationships which break down and the hurt that's there and the pain that comes from it, it's trying to say, actually, what is the model for a relationship which avoids that, which lets people kind of go into a sexual relationship in a way that is healthy and wholesome and builds them up and brings people together and keeps kind of, I guess, our mental health and I would say spiritual health as well on track. So that's why it kind of features. And of course, there's lots of debate about what the Bible says about sex, and there'll be lots of debate across different faiths about what it says. But the key point is, rather than focusing on the differences and everything else, right at the heart, and again, we'll touch on it later, of the Christian faith is about loving each other. And so it's about recognizing that at the heart of that kind of sexual relationship, there should be love. That's what I believe. And kind of, we can have a much longer debate about everything else, but that's probably where I'll finish it for today.
Thanks, Tim. Ritesh, from a Hindu perspective.
So as a Hindu perspective about the sex, actually, we can just see that. Rather than we go in the religious textbook, before that, we can just see that in the real life. Again, so man and woman, that's the most important part of the life in this world. Because they come together, they build the relationships, and the world just keep running. So initially, in Hindu scriptures, we can see this Purus and Prakriti. Prakriti means nature, and Purus, God. So when they come together, they have just think about how to run the world, how to create this universe, and it can be run. And they say they have divided as Purus and Prakriti, man and woman. Now, men and women, they have individual hormones in their body, individual needs, the kind of structure is different, the strength is different. So if you go to the scriptures, they have said that actually, the goddess, we believe in the male god and the female god. It means there's clearly said about the sex, male, female. And both are important because when they come together, okay, then the new generation started. Now, about the sex, we just about the say there are so many different concepts going on in the world nowadays because of the science. So, as Hindus believe, they have the importance, male and female, both of the sex. And sex is male or female, both are important for us. But when we just talk about the LGBT communities there, actually, and in the temple, there's so many questions comes to us as well at the time. What's your view? Because of the university, especially students, when they come to the temple, and what it learns in the scriptures. But in the scriptures, we couldn't find anything like that, actually, as what I have read. So at the time, we have just learned about the male and female, and both are important. So for me, sex is so important, actually, because they are the real base of this world to run. And they are the one who can just come together, they can share their love, and the side of happiness. Otherwise, you can see the male and female, they are different tendencies actually in the like nature. Like women are so sensitive, they can distract, or they are like very affective with the men. But man has a different mindset. They're very strong, look like strong, but internally they're not. So that's scripture's nonsense. Women is the energy for all of us. And that's why we pray to Goddess Durga, Jesus Durga, and we pray her to get the energy. So yes, we believe women's have energy.
Thanks, Ritesh. It's a really interesting answer there, and some things I definitely didn't know. And it's a really tough topic, I think. There are so many varying answers as well, even in our own faith as well, around that topic. But thanks both for engaging with that. One thing I probably should have said at the beginning is that you may notice if you saw the advert on the internet, we're one panelist down, and that's Lisa Marie, who is from the Buddhist faith. Lisa can't be with us today as she thinks she's got norovirus, so she's chosen not to share that with us. So we're very grateful for that. But I mention it now because she was on my list to ask that question too. But yeah, we are one person down today. So we're moving on from sex, but we're going to stay with potentially, I guess, a controversial subject. Zaliha, are Muslim women forced to wear headscarves?
The covering of the head is not unique to Islam. We have, the Jewish women who cover their heads or their bodies. We have the Hindu who do the same. We also have Christian. I know that, Mary, for instance, used to cover her head. So it's not unique to Islam. And women have done this, over history and in different parts of the world. And I think to force somebody to wear a headscarf, which we coin as the hijab, so what I'm wearing now, is not right. Equally, asking Muslim women to remove it is also not right. That is like, also oppression. So now there is a clear statement to the Quran, so our holy book, the Quran, where God says, I'll say it to Arabic and I'll give the meaning in English. La ikraha fi din. So there is no compulsion into religion. So by forcing, therefore, the Muslim woman to wear it will actually negate that statement from God himself. And I think the beauty of Islam is that we have choice. And that choice therefore means I have the choice to surrender to the will of God. I have the choice to listen, to obey to his commandments. And that's what it is. And that relationship is between me and God. So therefore, when the Muslim woman does that, she chooses to obey, to surrender to the will of God. And we take actually personal responsibility to wear it, to educate also family members, our parents, our children, on what God says basically into the Quran. And the mentioning of the covering for the Muslim women is not limited to them, it's also to the men. So I think that's something which some people would not know. So the cover is, the lowering of the gaze is to, honor, if you want, the Muslim woman, for instance. And the lowering of the gaze is both for men and women. And the injunction is there to protect, someone's honor, identity, giving that person also dignity and respect into our society. And I think Muslim women look also at how society expects them to wear clothes a certain way or to wear certain clothes to fit in with society. But I wear a hijab without being forced at all. And I didn't wear it until I was 20 plus. And it was just a decision of, I've got to do it. I understand what God has said into the Quran. I'm just going to do it because I'm seeking his pleasure. So that was my decision, never forced upon me. Even my children, or my kid, I have a girl, it was never forced upon her at all. And so she had, over time, although she is a kid, that understanding of that choice which was given to her. In fact, I even said to her, you are not wearing this. You are still a kid. But over time, she decided that she wants to wear it. And so that relationship is between, the Muslim woman and God in that respect. So the headscarf fits, I think, well into modesty which the Muslim woman wants to uphold. And I think it's wrong, actually. I think we have to ask that question. Why actually ask women, Muslim women, to remove their headscarf when they're actually showing their religious expression or identity?
Thanks,
Yes.
Zaliha. You mentioned at the beginning that it's not just Muslim women who asked to cover their heads, and we didn't go through this at the beginning, so I apologise. But I just wondering, can I come to you, Gerd?
Yeah,
because obviously you're sat here as a Sikh man wearing a turban.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that, if you
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Sikh faith, we believe in not cutting our hair. The idea behind that is Bible. So we refer to God has a million names. We don't believe that it's just single to Sikhs, within all the religions in the world. So we believe that our hair is sacred because God has given that to us. Our 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, actually said to us, he wanted us to be a good human in terms of he wants to be for us to be a warrior as well as a good humanitarian. One way they did that is by giving us an identity. So by wearing the turban, I stand out in a crowd. So the idea behind that is if someone is in need, whether that be physically in need in terms of they're being attacked or just they need my support, they can identify myself as a Sikh and can come to me for help.
There's some similarities around a uniform then. With
Definitely.
that as well. And I would say that there's some similarities about the reason I wear my dog collar as well, or my clerical collar is to provide that visible identity that I am a priest, and should someone need something, then I am there as a person of God that they can come to.
Exactly that, yeah.
Yes, in most religions, something special like that actually. Like we have this, like we just keep this ponytails and this chipa forehead, so you can just identify wherever you are. So different uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and of course we're in a uniformed organisation here, so we get uniform.
Don't could I just clarify something? I mentioned, the headscarf. So when we talk about the hijab, it's not, the head covering. So the hijab, in Arabic, it's a barrier between a person and the speaker. But we have other ways of actually, just because the hijab, so the headscarf has been, coined, as I said before, as a headscarf. So the hijab itself is a barrier between, a person and a speaker, for example. But there are different names that we'll give, for example, the jilbab or, the jilbab, for example, so large, maybe large, piece of clothing. So yeah, that's just the clarification which I wanted to bring before we move on, so it's not misunderstood.
Thank you. And panel, we're doing really well for time. So we spoke about at the beginning about that we wouldn't kind of interrupt and talk around each other, but we have got the time. So if there is things that are interesting you as we're going through, we've got the time. Probably being one member down has done that for us. So I think that's been a really interesting discussion around dress there, and perhaps some myths busted and some things learned as well. Now, I want to ask Tim a question. Now, as humans, we love to have a good time. Is the Bible, though, just a list of do nots? Are Christians restricted by it?
Is it a killjoy? Yeah, and it's easy to think that. I mean, when you look at the Bible, one of the things you get taught in school around the Ten Commandments, in the Old Testament, of course, common to the Jewish faith as well, kind of thou shalt not, if you kind of use the old language. And it's kind of easy to think of Christianity as that kind of list of rules of things that you shouldn't be doing. I would turn it completely on its head, though. When Jesus was talking, he was asked which of the rules is most important, because kind of in the Old Testament, there's a lot of rules, and some of them were cultural rules to help with kind of Jewish people live in the desert and in other kind of contexts we're in, and some of them were kind of about ways that we interact with each other and our relationship with God. And Jesus himself was fairly bad at keeping some of the rules. Obviously, the Sabbath, which kind of as Christians we now kind of celebrate on Sunday, Jewish faith on Saturday, kind of the culture he was in at the time, they wouldn't have worked on the Sabbath, and that was something that was really important. And when he was around, people came to him and said, look, there's a sick person over there that needs healing. And Jesus healed the person, and they were outraged that he'd done that on a Sunday. He said, well, which is more important? Healing someone who's in need, or keeping a rule about kind of Sundays being important, or the Sabbath being important? And actually, then he was asked kind of which of the kind of rules are most important. He said there's only really two rules. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength, and love each other as you would yourself. And so that's why I said kind of in my earlier answer, it's all about love. Kind of everything else kind of hinges around those two things: love God and love each other. And it's easy. And you look over kind of 2,000 years of history of what kind of in Christianity we say schisms, splits, divisions, kind of different denominations, different kind of sects within the Christian faith, all of which have grown up because people have kind of interpreted things slightly differently. And I think actually whenever those sorts of difficult subjects come up, it's kind of right back into the centre of what's this all about? Why are we here? Loving God with all our heart, loving each other as we would ourselves. And I think if you stick with that, then you kind of everything else comes into kind of that sense of they are there to guide how to live life in community amongst each other in a way that we don't hurt people. How can we love each other? Well, when you look back at the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, one way of loving people is not killing them. One way of loving them is not wanting what they've got when you don't have it. One way of loving people is kind of not stealing their wife or their donkey or whatever it kind of is referred to in the Ten Commandments. It's kind of that sense of the rules in inverted commas are there to help us understand how do we love each other? How can we kind of take our journey through life and walk it in a way which respects other people's journeys and where they're at as well. And I think the pinnacle for me is actually there's a bit of the New Testament talks about kind of some stuff that there are no rules around. It talks about kind of if you follow God and are filled with his spirit, and kind of that's a bit of a complex concept, but essentially I believe that, and the kind of Christians would believe that when Jesus died, he came back to life again. After a period of time, he went back up to heaven, and he came back down again as God, but as the Holy Spirit, which is kind of something that's all around us, inside of us. And it says that if we are following God's way and being guided by the Holy Spirit, then the way that we act would be filled with things like love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And it says against those there's no rules. And actually, rather than kind of thinking about what are the things that we should stop doing, actually, it's much more helpful to look and say, what does life look like when we're living it right? When we're at peace with each other, when we're loving each other, when we've got joy in our hearts. And joy is it's kind of like happiness, but that kind of all-encompassing happiness, which is kind of right deep inside rather than a kind of superficial smile on the face sort of happiness. Patience, when we're kind of being tried, and we know it from our roll out of the streets when you're on a Friday or Saturday night with some drunk people around who are keeping coming back and saying, look, why don't you just go home? Actually, it takes some real patience, doesn't it? And it's that sense of kind of a patience that comes from more than I can do, because I'm just human and I make mistakes and I'm fallible. But God isn't. And certainly as Christians, I believe that God lives inside us and helps us to do those things. And that's my guide, rather than what are the rules and having a rule book and go, oh no, I've broken rule 43B and I can't do that. I think it's a much more helpful kind of compass to have, saying, am I acting in a loving way? And is what I'm doing showing love to God and showing love to those around?
Love God and love each other. I can't imagine there's one of us sat here that doesn't agree with that rule. Thank you, Tim, very much. So I'm going to now move things on and come to Ritesh. And I must, of course, say to Ritesh, a very happy Diwali, and to Gurdik as well, who were celebrating over the weekend. But Ritesh, now a question that might puzzle a lot of people out there, and you've already talked about goddesses. Does Hinduism have one god or many gods?
Very nice question. Actually, everybody is about when talk about Hinduism and when they come temple, and they're confused. I would say there are lots of pictures on the walls, different names, thousands of names, and they ask some question. There's one god, many gods, right? So we have to just go back in the history. Actually, the Vedas, the main Veda, we got main Vedas, and in Veda this is Ekamayo Advitiyam. The Sanskrit actually, Ekamayo Advitiyam. There's only one. There's nothing else. So Vedas say there's only one God, but with so many different forms of the gods. Now to understand that, we have to just elaborate the terms of is a one God. Who is the one God then? And then it says Om. Now its Om contains 3 letters, A-U-M. A, just like when we, nowadays the yoga is like common for everyone. After the COVID, people are being more health conscious and just want to do yoga. Usually when you start with this, by chanting Om, it is more about, because Hinduism is based on science. Most of the things we can relate to the science and about the, looking at the nature. So Om is just like a sound, but this holy symbol for us. It's like Christianity, we have got a cross, God, star and moon. So different religion, different symbols. We have Om is a holy symbol, and that's one God. So when you say Om, A is the creation. Like we believe in Trinity, just like Christian also believe in Trinity. So A is the creation. So we start from what I mean. And U is the preservation, protector, Vishnu. And M just come on our lips. And when you say M, we always close our lips. We can't say M without touching our lips. Can you say M without touching your lips? No, no one can do it anyway. So it means that just create a destruction. So Om itself contains creation, preservation, and destructions. But ultimately, they divide into 3 forms with 3 different tasks. Now, when we just come to the temple or we go in different temples, there are so many different shrines, all the different gods. Like in different eras, we believe in the reincarnation as well. So in different eras, God came in different forms. Like 8th reincarnation of Lord Vishnu was a Krishna, the last one. Before he was Rama. The story of Diwali belongs to Rama. So in the same way, we can see the different eras, God is come in different forms with us. And that's how we can see so many different forms of God. But ultimately, Hindus believe there is only one God with so many different forms of the gods and different ways to the God as well. So not only is being saying that, okay, so like this is, yes, it's form of God. Right? One finger is there to God. These are the forms of gods. So the concept of Hinduism is obviously there's only one God, but yes, with so many different forms of gods.
So one God, but with different forms.
Yeah.
And if anyone's looking for any new terms online today, monotheistic is one God, and that's what each of us here have a belief in, a religion of one God, and polytheistic would be a belief in multiple gods. So I hope that's maybe answered some questions that people might have had, particularly around that question. Does Hinduism have multiple gods? Because I know from my trips to the temple, lots of different pictures, and I've wondered that question myself.
A little bit more in here actually. So why is this like so many forms of gods actually? And when I start my prayer with all these people, and they always, why is praying the idols? These look like small idols. What are you doing with the offering water, and what are you doing this? And every simple person. So obviously, we have to start from somewhere in belief system. So we start with believing God in the small idol initially, but gradually how to spiritually lift up yourself, not seeing the God only idol. We start from there. And when the see something else, okay, all the different deities of God. But not stop there. It's just like primary students. Then go in the secondary. Then in the college, you can say, okay, everywhere there is in whole Southampton there is a God. So the same way, we just go on the PhD. It means you can see God is everywhere and everything. So there is all are same. And when you reach this stage, you can simply say, oh, there's only one God. But we have to spiritually prep every day. We're just staying only one place in the nursery and we want to start there talking about the PhD. Oh, that makes so many confusion for everyone. So yes, every day lift up yourself with spirituality and start trying to develop yourself, seeing God everywhere.
There's a lot of similarities there between what you're saying and Christian faith, which talks about kind of God in heaven, God on earth as Jesus, and then God all around us as the Holy Spirit. And kind of the way I think about that is kind of like water. You've got kind of water, a liquid that you can drink. You've got water that is in ice, but you can kind of touch and feel. And you've got water as steam that evaporates, and kind of the same thing, but in different forms.
Different forms, yes.
Yeah.
Although in Islam, we believe in the oneness of God without any association. So we believe in the creator, not the creation, because the creation is dependent upon the creator. And the way also we try to seek God is through, or see how he manifests, if you want, is through his signs, but also through his name. So we know him as Ar-Rahman, so the most merciful, Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahman, the most gracious, Ar-Rahim, the most merciful. Then we know him as Al-Nur, so the lights. We know him as Al-Karim, Al-Hakim, the wise. So many different attributes or names. And when we understand who God is through those names, we actually begin to love him, to trust him, and to live according to his command, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, a really interesting one there. And I imagine we could probably talk about this for quite a while, because you're talking of the name of God's got me thinking of some of the sayings of Jesus, with when Jesus said, "I am the light of the world, and I am the door," and some similarities there. But I'm going to move us on for a bit of a topical question, particularly as we're kind of in the season of remembrance at the moment. I'm going to come first to Gerdit and say, so Gerdit, when you're dead, right?
Yeah.
Or not? Tell us about your belief in the afterlife.
Sure. So just a disclaimer. Obviously, I am Sikh. I don't claim to be the best Sikh in the world. Very knowledgeable. So my understanding is basic, but from my interpretation of what I've been taught is that there's so within the Sikh faith, we believe that there's 84 million life forms. And we believe that your human life is your last one, and your human life is the opportunity for you to do good. So we, like, similar to Hindu belief in karma. So within your human life, to do good throughout the life, and when you come to the end of that life, essentially that is where God, by how we refer to them, is basically making a decision on yourself, saying, has this person done good in their life? Have they helped others? Have they been greedy? Have they been overly lustful? Have they been angry throughout their life? And within the Sikh faith, we understand, similar to Christianity and a lot of other faiths, that humans will always make mistakes. But ultimately, once you come to the end of your life, that's when God will decide, has this person learned the lessons that I wanted them to learn, or will they be reincarnated? So to put the answer simply, within the Sikh faith, we believe in reincarnation of the human life until that person, we accept that no one's perfect, but until that person reaches a level within their self that they're doing good on a consistent basis. Does that make sense?
You just make a snap and letters, so you do something wrong, go back again.
Yeah.
Do more effort and reach 100.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
And what would happen then once you've got to that point where God is happy, you're doing the good?
Yeah.
You're not reincarnated again.
So that's when we believe you're one with God, and then essentially that's it. Your soul goes up to I don't think we call it heaven, but essentially goes to God, and that's when you're at peace.
Thank you. And the same question now to Zaliha. Tell us a bit about your belief in the afterlife, if you would.
Yeah, if I could just cite a verse of the Quran here, say again in Arabic, and then I'll explain to you in English what it says. So we have this verse in chapter 67, verse number 2. It says, الذي خلق الموت والحياة الدنيا ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الحكيم عزيز الغفور. So God in that verse says that He created death and life as a test for us, as to which of us is righteous indeed, and indeed God is exalted in might and most forgiving. So the creation of death and life is a test for us, and it's about seeing the result of that test in the afterlife. So that's going to be that outcome, the afterlife. And the afterlife is part of, again, the unseen. So the ghaib, as we say it in Arabic, so it's part of the unseen. And we believe that. So as the afterlife is that foundation of our faith as well, we believe that our existence in the world is temporary. So death is there one day, the world will end, our life will stop at some point in life. And there's therefore a day of recompense, a day of reckoning. And the king of that day of reckoning is God. And so from there, therefore, God will bring everybody back to life, and each of us will be shown, our books of deed. And for those who have done righteous deeds or good deeds, for them awaits Jannah, which is paradise in Arabic, paradise in English, Jannah in Arabic. And for those who have not done righteous good deeds or good deeds, and for them awaits Jahannam, so the hellfire. But there are three things which I would like to bring up here. Is that so when the Muslim thinks about death, there is first of all an aspect of how I have lived my life on earth, to the point that if death was to come now, I am ready to go knowing that I have fulfilled good deeds. So that includes looking after the neighbor, being respectful to yourself, giving respect to my parents, being good, everything good which God, exalts us to do, we've completed that. Then the other thing is about looking at any injustice that we've done to somebody. So have we repented before death has come? So looking at that aspect of injustice, ensuring that we have sought forgiveness from a person we have hurt. The other thing is that we know God as Ar-Rahman, so the most gracious, Ar-Rahim, the merciful. So God is merciful, and because of that mercy, He will use it, to enter, the ones who have not had the good deeds into Jannah. But as He is merciful, there's also that aspect of Him, of His wrath, which is severe. So everybody is exhorted, therefore, to live a life doing good, basically, until, death comes. But we have that aspect of, Jannah, so paradise, and also the hellfire, but no reincarnation, because but there's a lot to talk about, it's not very long. But there is that belief that we have in that, after everything stops, when we are there, and when we are into that afterlife, there's no return on earth. There's just that judgment which everybody is awaiting. God will gather us and we'll be in front of Him being the ultimate judge and deciding He goes by based on what, of course, we have done into our life on earth.
Thank you, Zaliha. And we heard a little bit while Gerda was talking from Ritesh as well. So I think it's only right just to quickly come to Tim and say, heaven for Christians, isn't that up in the clouds with God with a big beard?
With a harp and...
Yeah.
I guess there's two questions really. What is heaven? And for me, heaven is being with God. And all those sorts of things that we talk about, love, joy, peace, patience, that kind of sense of how could life look like? What would be ideal sense of being? It's that in spades. And at the end of the Bible, in a slightly odd book, we definitely won't get there, but in Revelation, it talks about there being a new heaven and a new earth, and kind of everything stripping away, no more pain, no more tears, no more crying, no more suffering.
Yeah.
Everything that is kind of hurtful and painful about the world has gone, and we are with God. So that's kind of what heaven looks like. But in terms of how do you get there, my favourite verse in the whole of the Bible is from a book called John, and it says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son," so Jesus, that whoever believes in Him, so whatever anyone has done, they wouldn't die, but they'd have eternal life. And that talks about a principle in the Christian faith called grace, which basically says, but whatever anyone has done, however bad it is, and let's face it, in the work we do, we see some really bad stuff, and it's quite difficult to kind of reconcile that at times. But however bad someone is, actually, if they turn away from that, if they say they're sorry, if they truly believe in God, then whatever they've done falls away. And it's that belief in God and that sense of saying, look, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done it. Recognizing that actually, if we're still alive, we're going to keep making mistakes, because none of us are perfect, and however much we try, we keep making mistakes. But that sense of keeping coming back, and so if anyone's ever been to a church service, particularly Anglican services, you'll see in pretty much every one a confession which talks about that this is what I've done wrong, kind of bringing it to God and saying, look, I'm really sorry for that. I shouldn't have done it. I want to be better. I want to keep trying. But ultimately, it's not for Christians, it's not about what you do so much as that kind of sense of coming back to God, putting everything that you've done that wasn't right, trying to be better, and that sense of kind of, there's another verse that says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So there's not a limit on it. It's kind of open to everyone, just believing in God and asking Him to take away all the bad stuff that we've done and help us to live that life of kind of love, joy, peace, patience, etc.
Thanks. Tim, I did wonder if you were going to get in a bit of Tina Turner at any point there with Mr. Is a Place on Earth. So really interesting responses there from everyone. So we're beginning to come into land here as a panel. I've got one more question for everyone. So I would really encourage you to start thinking online if you've got any questions for any of the panel as we're going to have a bit of time to do that. The easiest way will be to come off mute to ask a question, because otherwise I'm going to have to keep coming forward and checking the chat, and then you're going to see an awful big me as I walk towards the camera. So if you do have some questions and are willing to come off mute in a moment, that would be great. So my final question for our panel, and it's a bit of a random one really, but is what do you wish people knew about your faith? And let's go Ritesh first.
Right, about the Hinduism, actually, we just came from the beginning of that. It's one God, and after so many different forms of a God, and different forms of a God. And from there, and then let's say Lord Rama came in this world, and he just taught us respect and the truth. Similarly, from the Lord Krishna, he says God is love is a God. So like Lord Krishna is teaching us love, the Rama is teaching respect and truth. So all kind of these things comes like for the making a real human. To be a human in this world, Hinduism does say is always doing the right things. That's Hinduism, simply. And that's because what are the right things to do, like being helpful, looking after each other, caring, loving. So these are all the qualities for being a good human. It's we learn from all the scriptures of the scriptures. We can see the life of the God when he come in different forms, how he spent his life. Even Lord Rama came in this world, and obviously he was just in the forest for 14 years, and he was like a human. He was crying and looking for his wife, and this means he's just looking for the love. And he fought with a tema. It means he fought for the love. So it means Hindus believe one God with many forms of gods and so many different qualities we can learn from the scriptures, and that's only way we can just be a good human. And that's the only way a good human can make a good society. And we just want harmony.
So the different things that we can learn from scripture to make us good human beings. Thanks, Ritesh. Zaliha, what's the one thing you wish people knew about your faith?
Gosh, I need anything really. So I think one thing which I think I would like to highlight is that I would like to invite people to know about Muslims and Islam, because I think it will make the person less afraid of Muslims and even also of our religion. There is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that says, "Paradise lies beneath the feet or the foot of your mother." So this just shows the status that our mothers, have into society, into our homes. The suffering or the pain that they've gone through, childbirth. They're raising us to who we are now. So Islam actually highlights, her position, the mother's position into our heart of society. And I think moving on from this point that were attached to what we discussed earlier, life after death. In Islam also there's another saying of the Prophet Muhammad, a piece of him that says that, when a person dies or when a man dies, all his good deeds comes to a stop except for three things. So beneficial knowledge and a righteous child that prays for them, but also ongoing charity. So it could be planting a tree, and that tree would maybe bear fruits. It would be a shelter to somebody. If the children who pray for you, because we believe that the kids, when they pray, for the parents or for a person, it paves their way, closer, to Jannah, to paradise. But also knowledge, in the fact that we've learned from each other today, we can share it with other people. So Islam also looks at how any good knowledge that you have, you share with somebody, can then roll, from one person to another, and that end really. Yeah.
Thanks, Lee. And I think part of what we're reading today is that knowledge sharing, isn't it? And learning, each of us here in the room, I think, has probably learned something today, and I hope those online have as well. So Gerdit, what's the one thing you wish people knew about your faith?
Again, similar to Zaliha, obviously, probably time is of the essence. But one thing that I want people to know about Sikhism, because it's one of the fifth largest religions in the world, but it doesn't seem to be It's still quite a young religion. It's about 500 years old. One of the concepts within Sikhism that I really like is the idea of seva. So that's similar to the Hindu. Essentially, what that means is selfless service. So anyone out there that knows of a Sikh temple, so I actually go to the Sikh temple in Portsmouth on Margate Road, or any other Sikh temple local to you, it is open to anyone. So it doesn't matter whether you're atheist, Christian, Muslim, whatever religion you are. A Sikh temple is always open. There's some rules like every religion you have to adhere to, and that's just cover your head. And there's a free meal for everyone. So in Amritsar in India, the Golden Temple, which is our holy shrine, has 4 entrances. And what that symbolises is that anyone from any background, any sexuality, any gender is welcome within that temple, that Gurdwara, and has access to a free meal. And that's one thing that I want to put out there about Sikhism.
Thank you. And there's definitely one thing in common with all of us, and that there's something about food and doing food really, really well. And I've been to some amazing meals at the mosque and at the temple. I've not been to a Gurdwara yet for food, but I would love to come at some point. And of course, every church relies on a good buffet and feeding. So Tim, the thing you wish people knew.
So just reflecting on, because there's so much that we've talked about, which is kind of really valuable. But I think for me, there's a verse in the Bible that says nothing can separate us from the love of God. And I think for me, that's kind of a real reassurance in my faith. And we talked earlier, Dominic talked earlier about the kind of beauty of nature, and then says it's here. And it kind of when kind of certainly in terms of what I believe, when God made the earth, it was perfect and it was great, and we messed it up as kind of humankind, mankind. Not very inclusive term, that's a human thing about. And kind of in the Bible, we talk a lot about sin. There's a lot of terms, aren't there, kind of across all of our faiths, but kind of it can be quite alien. And the way that I think about it is kind of essentially as people, we've said kind of, I talk about this with the kids, so it's slightly childish, but kind of shove off God, I'm in charge, not you. That's kind of essentially kind of how I think of sin, is kind of going against what God. Now, kind of in the way I think of things, God is a just God, and we're pleasing, aren't we? We do justice. We do kind of when something does something wrong, there's a trial and there's a hearing, and so then kind of they have to pay the price. And the same kind of fits for kind of Christianity. And because God's a just God, there had to be a price that's paid for what's done wrong. And I guess the bit that is right at the heart of that for me is, rather than us having to pay the price, Jesus, when he came, he died so that he would pay the price for us. And that's where that verse kind of, everyone who calls on the Lord shall be saved. Nothing can separate us from God's love. It's that sense of, because Jesus died, there is nothing, kind of neither death nor life, and it goes on from there, that can separate us from God. And I think that for me is a real reassurance. However tough life is feeling, and let's face it, life can feel really tough at times, and we can go through some really horrendous stuff. Whatever we go through, God's still there walking that journey with us. And there's a lovely story, probably a bit cliched, you might have heard it, of kind of a analogy of kind of someone who's going through a tough time in life, and they're picturing their kind of life as a journey on sand, and they're kind of seeing, as they're walking through life, 2 sets of footprints. And then as they get to a tough time in life, there's only 1 set of footprints, and they see these 2 sets of footprints as them walking alongside God. And then they say, God, what's going on when there's this kind of 1 set of footprints? Why did you abandon me when times were toughest? And God turns around and says, no, it wasn't that I abandoned you, it's that I carried you at those times. And so there's 1 set of footprints. It's not from the Bible, it's kind of that just sense of when times are tough, God's there carrying us and helping us through.
Thanks, Tim. A beautiful story to finish on. So my thanks to Zaliha, Ritesh, Gerdit and Tim for coming today, for your honesty and your willingness to participate. This was done as part of Interfaith Week. Interfaith Week is going on all week across our constabulary in the various PICs, and here at Netley there are tables that have been set up. We've got information on and leaflets where if you want to find out any more about the different faiths, then you can do. Locally, we have a Christian Police Association and we have the Hampshire Association of Muslim Police, which are our local based faith networks, but nationally there is also a National Sikh Police Association, and there being set up at the moment is a Hindu police association. The only other one is in the Met at the moment, and there are lots and lots of other faith-based police associations, from pagan police association to Jewish police association. So if you're interested in finding out anything more about any of the faiths, do have a little look online. So we said at the beginning, before we went live, that it would be a miracle if we got through all of our questions. But Tim reassured me that as we're in the business of miracles, we'd make it through. So we've got 5 minutes to spare. If anyone has any questions online, I know the panel will be really willing to take those. And Duncan, straight on with your hand up. If you wouldn't mind unmuting and asking your question, that would be the easiest for us.
Yeah, certainly, Dom. Thank you to you and all the panel. Really interesting. I have a question in relation to my job. So I'm police staff, and part of my role is to try and improve mutual trust between the police and victims of crime. So I wanted to ask, how important is each of your faiths to improving ethics in policing? Thank you.
Let's go around the room, starting with Zaliha on my right.
Can you repeat it, please? So
it was how can our faith help improve ethics in policing, I think, Duncan?
Yes, that's correct.
I think I see it as a personal responsibility to do it right, and when we do it wrong, to just stop and apologize. And that's one thing, about our faith, where we look at, if you've done something wrong, within law, you've got to try and rectify it. So I think it's just a personal responsibility. They were understanding for people to take in order to improve that ethics part.
Yeah, there's something about our faith and our kind of very code of ethics, for want of a better word, but that runs through our faith, isn't it? And very, very clear rights and wrongs for people of faith. Anyone have anything else to add to that?
For myself, being a police officer as well as a Sikh, the ethics and values that I was taught as a Sikh, a lot of it coincides, and I'm sure you'll agree with policing, and that's being honesty, integrity, that kind of thing, as well as again bringing back to the concept of seva, so selfless service. As a police officer and as police staff, we're all public servants, aren't we? So we serve the community. So I find that within Sikhism, a lot of what I've been taught is the same as my job.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess a couple of points. Firstly, just having faith doesn't mean that you act ethically, because they are different. It's possible there's a principle, noble cause corruption, where people do the right thing, but actually, or have the right intention, but do the wrong thing. And so having a framework within policing that talks about what our ethics are is really important. And as you said, kind of, for me, my faith absolutely fits with that code of ethics, but it might not do for everyone. And it's really important, depending on what people's faiths are, that they're able to sign up to both their faith and the code of ethics, or at least have that debate around it. But Duncan, in terms of the kind of wider point that you made in terms of community engagement, I think there is something there, and I think we'd all agree, but we're really open debate around it. But kind of faith is central to our lives, and so in terms of that engagement with communities and how do we do that effectively, if we do that in absence of kind of faith communities and people's faith, then it's never going to land for those who have faith. Of course, if people don't have faith, then that's different. And so it's just recognising, but particularly if people have been victims of hate crime relating to places of worship, that can have a real kind of impact and a real sense of safety on a whole community. And actually at Netley downstairs, and I'm sure online as well, there is a police officer's guide to interacting with faith communities. It's on, Jiz will be able to say that I think it's online as well on the intranet site. Really useful guide across all faiths about, as police officers, how can we best interact with faith communities to do that engagement as effectively as possible.
Thanks, Tim. And rather than go to Ritesh for an answer to that question, in the last minute, is there another question from the floor at all? If there are no more questions from the floor, then I just want to say a big thank you for you coming online. We have been recording today, so we will make it available certainly on the Chaplaincy YouTube page and our chat to Collins about where we can place it locally. But if you do want a copy of the recording, then you're very welcome to email me. So a massive thank you to all of you online, and a massive thank you to the panel for coming today. We will end that there. I'm just going to ask Giselle, who I know is in the building, if she could pop up and take a photo of the panel as well. But thank you everyone so much, and take care. Bye-bye.